What is going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here, bringing you another episode. Now, today's going to be a special episode, and the theming is really exciting. As you know, around the time of dropping this episode, this upcoming Sunday is going to be Father's Day. So a big shout out to all the fathers out there keeping, the hustle strong and just doing everything that is required of, being a father. And today we're going to be joined by Alex Duta, founder of Albiware, and we're going to be talking about some of his story. Obviously him and his father own a very successful restoration organization. And then of course, Alex has gone on to, work on Albiware, which is an amazing software within our restoration arena. And we're going to get into some of his father's story, what it was like for him coming to the United States, working, and some of those values that his father instilled into him, and some of these, perspectives on how it's affecting his business and moving forward, everything from how it affects his hiring to his overall philosophy in the software company that he has now. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground. We're going to be talking about, not only the restoration business, marketing. We're going to be talking about lots of great things and some of the upcoming things that Alex has going on. For example, he's got a book that's going to be hopefully available early 2024. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. And we're going to leave links in the video description as well as in the show notes below. So make sure that you check out those links. So had an amazing time going ahead and recording this interview with Alex. He's a super energetic and dynamic individual. Always love having him on the show. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Boom.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, Dominators, what is going on? Buckle in for another episode. Alex, man, thank you so much for jumping back on the show. Are you ready to help us dominate?
Fuck yeah, Rico. Thanks so much for having me.
I love it. I think you're actually the first one that dropped the F-bomb, and I've been totally waiting for somebody to do it. So thank God it's you. Do me a favor, man. Fill in for those that may not be familiar with the name, that aren't quite sure exactly who you are. Fill in some of the gaps on my intro and just let everybody know exactly who it is that you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Had the honor to be here about, I think, a year and a half ago. And now I was super scruffy, just got out of the hospital with COVID. And this is my first appearance kind of thing. But thanks for having me back. For those of you that don't know me, been a restorer for the past decade, grew and scaled a restoration company here in the Chicagoland area to over 8 figures, about 50 or so employees, full service restoration company. Had the honor to do that with my best friend in life and actually my father, which is kind of like a nice segue into this. And then found out that restorers don't really get much love in the technology space because nobody really builds products, technological products for restorers. And figured out that, hey, this might be an interesting problem to solve. Partnered together with my best friend from college who was on his way to Microsoft. And we built this thing called Albi, which is, I would say, the leading restoration technological product in the industry right now. So basically, we're an all-inclusive job management system, CRM, and field documentation solution for restoration contractors. A couple thousand restorers use Albi on a daily basis, which I'm super excited about because I think about a year and a half ago we were just getting started, and we just want to empower restorers to leverage technology to grow and scale their business, get paid faster, and we believe that by making technology simple and accessible to restorers, we can do that. So, yeah.
That's awesome, dude. And I want to get back to the simple and accessible, but I just kind of want to put a pin in that and just kind of frame the conversation a little bit, because this episode, if all goes well, will be released the Thursday before Father's Day. And you and I were talking a little bit off camera, and actually even before we jumped on this, where we're talking about a Father's Day style episode and stuff like that. And you and I have a lot of similarities in the sense of, coming first generation American, fathers working, and just kind of figuring out the United States and everything else. And everybody kind of has their own path. But I want to get into that side of the story. And, I know that you said, your best friend and your father, which is amazing. A lot of my early experiences in life and business were with my father as well. A lot of the grit and the work ethic that I have, 100% I attribute to my father and the things that he put me through, which at the time, full disclosure, I did not enjoy. But as you become an adult, you really do appreciate. So, kind of walk me through your story, man. Talk to me about like what you saw, what that era was like for you in your life, what your firsthand experiences were, but more importantly, kind of framing this. Let us know how that started to forge your vision as who you are as a man, and then how you were going to deal with the world of business.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may, I want to give some context and kind of go pre me being alive, even, right? Not even being in the business world. I want to kind of, tell the story of what my parents went through, if you don't mind.
100%.
Because I think it'll put a lot of context on, who I am today. And it did shape me a lot. So, yeah, but my parents basically grew up in communist Romania. Basically, for those of you that don't know, Eastern Europe was basically communist for the longest time ever. And until like 1989, when the communist government fell through, Romania was a communist country. And that meant like literally like extreme poverty. People would like wait in lines just to get a loaf of bread kind of thing. Like you would stand in line for 4 hours to be able to get your ration of bread, rice, whatever you were, right?
That
like,
still happens today in Cuba, by the way.
Yeah. So, it's totally a privilege to be an American and not have to like worry about all that stuff. And it's a lot easier to be a successful entrepreneur when you don't have to worry about that. But father grew up in a village with no running water whatsoever. So they would actually go to like the well in the middle of the village and go with a bucket and drop it all the way down, grab the water, go heat it up on the stove. And that's how they took a bath. Fell in love with my mother, who was a city girl at the time. And eventually, they both started from absolute nothing. Communist government fell through and Romania became a democracy. And with that came the opportunity of outsider things being super attractive in Romania, right? Because you went from like, you didn't have foreign cars, you didn't have foreign food, you didn't have foreign clothes. There was nothing foreign. Everything was domestic, to now the government fell down and there's this huge opportunity. So my parents literally started a business basically importing things. So they would hop on a bus to Turkey, to Istanbul. They would go to the bazaars in Istanbul and buy up all the freaking clothes they could. They were Turkish clothes. And then they'd come back to Romania and sell Turkish clothes, right? And eventually they built up like 8 different stores where they were doing this. And my father was always looking for different ways to bring foreign things in. And there was this American who was selling pens, American pens, and he was shipping them to Europe. And my father got in contact with them. He's like, hey, let's bring them to Romania. And those American pens were like misprints. So like, let's say, Restoration Domination goes to, Billy and wants to print some pens. And instead of Restoration Domination, it says, I don't know, Restoration Domination or whatever.
Right. Which is probably a lot of people have received emails with that my own misspelling. So that's fine. Yeah.
Exactly. So those would get sent. It's like you have thousands of pens for like Kodak, Nikon, whatever. It's like they would get sent to Romania and my father would sell them as American pens. And like that's all amazing. The Romanians would clamor about it. But the reason that's important is that gentleman from the States ended up applying for this thing called the diversity visa for my parents. And basically, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's like a green card lottery. So you're put in a lottery, and if you win, you get the right to come to the States, which you can't otherwise. And one night, 2:00 in the morning, this guy calls my dad. And he's like, hey, is your wife's name Duta, Emanuela, Daniela? Yeah. Why the fuck are you calling me at 2:00 in the morning and asking me what my wife's name is? It's like, you won the green card lottery. And they had like 6 months to get to the States, and the date would have been June 1st. I don't know the year. So anyway, but they literally were going back and forth. Like, do we want to do this? Do we want to start from zero already? And then eventually they said, all right, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it for our son, me at the time. And I was like, I was super young. By the time we came to the States, I was like 14 months old. And actually we landed.
Did they get here to the States June 1st?
Yeah. So on June 1st, they got here.
So here's what's really trippy, because we didn't know about this before. Okay. My parents got here on June 1st.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's
really trippy, right? Yeah.
Maybe that's like an opportunistic date or something.
Yeah, I guess so. Who knows?
But what's actually even crazier, and I'll send you the photo. My first steps, I was 14 months old, and my first steps alone was the day that we got back to the States on June 1st.
Nice.
And that was the first time I took steps. And I love that. And I have the picture. And I was just in Boston last week, and we recreated the picture with my daughter in that same exact spot in Quincy, Massachusetts. That's where I took my first steps. So, as you can see, without even trying to stage it, I am a product of the American dream. So anyway, parents, all kinds of weird jobs from cleaning houses to cleaning medical instruments of blood, all kinds of stuff. Always thought about going back and forth. They always had this constant struggle of, hey, did we really hit the jackpot? Is America really all that? Or should we go back? I was sent back and forth between Romania and the States, constantly, because it was very hard to work 16-hour days and raise a child and things like those. Eventually we moved from Boston, which was very expensive, to Chicago. That was relatively inexpensive. And then my parents started getting into a rhythm and started seeing the American dream. My father started a construction business. My mom was bartending. And then within 5 years of them moving here, they bought their first apartment. They started realizing the benefits of real estate, started investing in real estate here, back in Romania. Everything was going great. They were building a portfolio. And then the housing market crashed. And I'm growing up through this shit. I'm growing up through 4, 5, 6-year-old me sleeping in the car because dad has to, drop mom off at work and things like those. And, I'm seeing them consistently struggle. And then I'm in middle school, and the housing market is crashing, and I'm witnessing firsthand how they literally thought they lost everything, right? The housing market crash, for anybody who was very invested in real estate, was huge. And it really shaped me. I mean, I didn't get the typical American childhood growing up and playing sports and hanging out with your friends and things like those. I was literally super strict European, go to school so you don't have to work as hard as we do. Look how hard your dad works, look how hard your mom works, go to school, because if you go to school, you don't have to work as hard, and things like those. So, yeah.
So then what happened then? So, I mean, obviously the housing, this puts you what, 2007, 2008, somewhere in that pocket?
Yeah, 2007, 2008, housing market goes to crap. The real estate was no longer a viable option. My dad was a subcontractor at the time for actually fire restoration companies. And he had a guy fall off the roof that wasn't even his employee. It was another sub of the general contractor that hired my dad. Right. And that guy fell off the roof, got really injured. It was a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And my dad he got dropped from his workers' comp coverage. And this was before the states would come in and back you up. So since he didn't have workers' comp coverage, he no longer could work with all these general contractors, right? So he's going to work with the restoration company. So he ended up doing a bunch of wild things. He ended up trucking for a while. So he would drive a truck cross country, and he was gone all the time. And then he kind of was okay, if I can't be a restoration company, he became an insurance adjuster. So he went and, did cat work and chasing insurance and things like those. And, in the same time, they were with me, while all this was happening, they were very my way or the highway, typical, European parents. You got to, go to school, work hard. You can't do all this other stuff that people want to do. And I was very okay, my way or the highway sounds great. So I was in high school, I started doing all kind, I got driven to okay, it's the highway. So I got to figure out how to fend for myself. So I did all kinds of website design, snow removal, landscaping, early high school years. I basically started this snow removal company, and in the winters, me and 4 of my buds would literally snow plow people's driveways. And that turned into by the time I could drive, we had plowing trucks. I would sell printing and promotional material. I did all this crazy stuff throughout high school just to try to, work my way out of the house so that way I could be independent, because I didn't like the whole my way or the highway thing, which was kind of rebellious.
Right.
And then eventually ended up moving out. I was still in high school. So that happened. And my parents and I really I guess the tensions of the American dream really broke us completely apart, which I assume you have a similar story too. A lot of first generation families, the views are super skewed, and, you butt heads and then it snaps.
Right.
And, fast forward a year after that had snapped, my father and I were going to get together, and it was Christmas, around between Christmas and New Year's. We got together and we went to Florida on a little family trip to try to rekindle the relationship. And that's when him and I were talking business. Hey, how's it going? I was, selling printing and promotional material to dealerships. I had the snow removal thing going on. And he's like, hey, I really, really want to start a restaurant. I think that that's going to be great. It's a good cash flowing business and things like
Jesus
those.
Christ. We grew up in the restaurant business, bro.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's brutal. Like we were talking about fast food and things like those. He's like, you know,
Mhm.
you want to start it together. And like, we were spitballing and we keep going back and forth. And I'm like, at the end, the conclusion was, instead of starting a restaurant, why don't we start a restoration company? It's
Right.
like, you already kind of know how to put houses back together, and you were an insurance adjuster for like, you know, 3/4 of a year. Right. And he was like, yeah, but like leads and marketing and things like those, like that's my struggle. And I'm like, well, I'm selling business cards to car dealerships.
Right.
And I was like, look like a baby. I'm like, I can sell whatever. So
Right.
it was like December 2014, I think that was, where we decided, okay, hey, we're going to start working together. And we basically decided to start this restoration company. And the goal was, we would each get a truck, we would do the work ourselves, and we would do one fire a year. That was the goal, right? $500,000 fire, $250,000 of cost of goods sold, 250 of profit. You know, we each make $100,000 a year. We use the 50 to reinvest. That was
Which, by the way, full disclosure, not a bad goal. Not a bad goal whatsoever. And I think that a lot of restoration contractors kind of get there in the beginning. They're like, hey, you know what? Yeah. If I could just crack, you know, $150 a year take home, I'm good. Yep. 100%,
right?
100%. So what happened from there?
Yeah. So from there, it's like, all right, we decided to do it. And I'm like, all right, how the hell are we going to get jobs, right? Like that was the big thing. Like we knew how to do the work, but we didn't know how to do jobs. Started chasing fires because that was the thing to do. Witnessed a bunch of crazy shit. I mean, people fist fighting over fires in Chicago. I mean, there's 7 fires a day. I would sit with like a little Bluetooth headpiece in my ear and, you know, listen to the fires and go out there. And like, I started noticing that the people that were showing up to the job sites had like emergency services, board up, like all these things. I'm like, people don't sell fires at fire scenes. They sell emergency services. I'm like, well, what are these emergency services? And I did some digging, saw mitigation, things like those. So I go to my dad with a genius idea of, hey, you know, we're not going to be able to sell the fire. We need to sell the emergency services and then get the fire. He's like, dude, you're nuts. You're telling me we have to be 24/7, right? And like what you're going to start seeing here is like the biggest success of Rome Xterra was the dichotomy between me and my dad. I was like crazy, like sales boy. He was more like ops, like, you know, conservative. He's like, how are you going to have a call center to answer the phone at night and things like those? I'm like, easy. You just sleep with your phone on loud and you wake up or whatever. So he's a little skeptical at first, but we started doing emergency services. Ended up signing up with like 33-mile radius, Thumbtack, and a few other things. And eventually this big storm hit through and flooded a part of Chicagoland. And we got like 5 jobs. It was just me and him, all mitigation only. Called in a bunch of my buds. They came in, we did it, and we did like $40,000 of work in like a day and a half. My grandfather actually was in town, and he came to experience.
You put him to work.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, no meal is free.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like, and then that's where it clicked. It's like, oh, emergency service work, $40,000 a day. $10,000 worth of labor, if that. I don't even think the labor was that much. And then we got all the rebuild for all those jobs too. And like the light bulbs went off and we're like, all right, cool. This is what we're doing. And then 6 years, 8 figures plus. I mean, Rome Xterra is still standing today, you know, 80 to 90 employees, I would say, you know, our own building. A lot of great things happened throughout the time and throughout the growth.
That's awesome, dude. So a lot of people talk about family and business don't mix. I have my own version of, you know, what it's like to establish businesses with my late father. And it wasn't always nice, to say the least. Right. So what I'm interested in is like, how was those early years, right? Because you're building a brand new business right from beginning. You've got a newer age approach of, hey, this is how we can get some leads. This is how we should market. You know, let's get a little bit more aggressive. The old man is probably a little bit more, at the time anyways, he's probably a little gun shy. He's just recovering from the housing issue. Like there's a lot of, you know, as you get older, the punches in the gut start to hurt a little bit more, right? You start to get a little bit more apprehensive, not because of anything more than just the sheer amount of responsibility, and you know that your timeline is shrinking, right? So that comes with its own vision and objectives. How did that shape your organization, and how did those early experiences shape your way now of looking at business and hiring people and expanding?
Yeah, man, you nailed it spot on. Like that dichotomy of him being like gun shy, hit rock bottom a bunch of times, and me never hitting rock bottom. Like I started from the bottom, now I was here, and like I
Yeah.
never had those dips, right? That dichotomy was crazy. And like the quick side story is that $40,000 mitigation spree was actually from 33-mile radius. I don't want to shamelessly plug them here, but they called me and they were like, "Hey, you know, you only pay for leads, right?" I'm like, "Oh, so there's no monthly subscription or anything?" No, it's like phone rings, and if it's a client that has water damage and they need you, we charge you for it. I'm like, hell yeah, I can sell a client if they have water damage and they're gonna call me, right?
Right.
So I go up to my dad, I'm like, "We're doing this." He's like, "No, I've been burnt by too many lead providers. We're doing this." So I'm like, "All right, you know, the whole polite blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Fuck that." I call them up, I give them my personal credit card just to prove a point, right? And that's what like kicked that in. So consistently throughout us growing was that friction of like me like saying, "Hey, we really need to get out of this. We really need to do things in a different way. Like I get it. You got these battle wounds and things like those." And consistently he was very conservative, very like, "Hey, we don't want to grow and break our necks," and things like. And like reflecting upon it, that dichotomy was the key to our success because I would jump forward, he would kind of be the center, right? And push us backwards a little bit, but not backwards in a negative way. I knew if I could talk him into something, it was probably a good enough idea, and I did all the thinking, and I wasn't jumping headfirst into a brick wall. He also knew that if I jump forward and I'm able to convince him, that halfway spot is kind of where the magic happens. So like, I think the key to success, and again, we grew very fast, was that dichotomy. And now when I coach clients, I typically see that the people who struggle the most have just one of the personalities. They're either like the hustlers, and they're the hustlers that fail at scale because they don't have that ops guy that's like Mr. Zen, Mr. Keep It All Together, or they're the super operational freaks that are like Mr. Zen and they're just sitting there, but they don't have like the sales background and they can't sell any.
Right.
And to answer your question, doing business together with my father actually built our relationship. It didn't build a very healthy one, but we went from no relationship because of the my way or the highway dynamic that rebellious Alex just like threw away to now we're like forced to work together. Now, it wasn't ideal because like our dinner conversations were all about work and things like those, but at least we had some sort of relationship and we were talking versus, you know, if I had my own business and he had his own, we might not have talked. It wasn't until I exited out of Xactimate, started Albi, and now we're kind of doing our own two separate things. And we had all that rekindling while building Xactimate up to what it was together, that now we have that healthy relationships where it's not work. But, so, you know, I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, obviously, I mean, at this point, it's, again, better than having no relationship in some cases. You know, a profitable and maybe not so great relationship. I mean, that's a win. That's a win for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So how long did it take for you guys to scale to your first 7 figures?
First 7 figures was within the first year.
Yeah.
We cleared $1 million our first year.
Nice. And how many people did you have, you know, as far as a team at that point?
Well, technically we didn't have any employees, but we had about 12 1099 subcontractors at the time that were working with us.
I love the air quotes, by the way. We had 1099 employees. That's amazing.
Yeah. Right. And then, quickly, you know, soon after we realized, hey, this doesn't work anymore. You know, at scale, you need to button things up. And but
that's awesome. So then that basically takes us to now Albiware, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, how you made that transition. What I want to ask and what I want to get into now is during the restoration time, right? You're doing new business, you're closing deals, you've got people running around, you're trying to chase down money. There's a million things that are going on that everybody who's listening to the show understands all of the headaches of the restoration game. Every restoration company does things slightly different. There is really no one size fits all. At the time, what were the solutions that were available, and what was wrong with the solutions that were available that made you say, dude, this really sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I think that I found a better way. What was that moment for you to where it finally drove you to make a decision? But before you answer that, let's just take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. Are you a restoration business owner thinking about selling your business, or maybe you're just at that point where you're starting to consider some of your options? Either way, you need to know about our sponsor, Restoration Brokers of America. You see, RBA is a full-service brokerage firm that specializes in helping restoration business owners sell their companies for their maximum value. And when you work with RBA, you're going to get a personalized approach that takes everything into consideration, looking at your unique circumstances as well as your goals. They're also going to help you identify the potential buyers. They're going to go ahead and negotiate the best terms, and they're going to make everything go as smooth as possible. Plus, they're also going to handle all of the paperwork and the legal details so that you can focus on exactly what it is that you do best, which is running your business. So if you're thinking about selling your business, don't do it alone. Contact RBA today and let them help you get the best possible outcome. All you have to do is visit their website, sellmyrestorationbusiness.com. Again, that's sellmyrestorationbusiness.com, and learn more. Hey, Dominator, did you know that it takes about 45 days for most contractors to get paid on emergency service jobs? And some contractors report much longer wait times than that. Either way, it's a long time, especially when you start adding in all of the stress that you have to do to keep up with payroll, overhead costs, and everything that goes along with just running a business. Well, One Claim Solutions is an insurance billing specialist that not only gets their clients paid in 32 days on average, but it also improves their profitability. And above and beyond that, it also handles all of the communications with the adjusters. One Claim Solutions was actually founded back in 2016. And since then, they've been able to process hundreds of millions of dollars in insurance invoices on behalf of their clients. Listen, you deserve to work with a specialist that has well-trained attorneys as well as staff. And also they have proprietary purpose-built technology with some really rigorous time-proven processes that's needed to deliver a best-in-class insurance billing experience. One Claim Solutions will handle it all so that you can focus on really what matters most, which is running your business. Head on over to oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. Again, that's oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. Book your free consultation today. Dominators, let's face it, your company will make it or break it on the backs of your estimating team. But if we're honest here for a second, what tools have you actually given them to succeed? The Actionable Profile is the newest tool inside of your estimator's toolbox, or at the very least, it should be. The Actionable Xactimate Profile is a data-driven solution that provides real-time estimating guidance on the fly. It checks for both overages, omissions in your estimates in real time, leading your team to having much more accurate scopes each and every single time that they're writing an estimate. Avoid any kind of potential conflicts with the adjuster and ensure that your estimates include every single warranted line item with the Actionable Xactimate Profile. Get your free demo today. If you head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate, we've got an amazing offer for you. Again, head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate and get your free demo today. All right, Dominators. So if you are looking for a job or you're looking for career advancement inside of the disaster restoration industry, well, listen, look no further. I want you to go ahead and reach out to Wylander. Wylander is the leading job placement firm inside of the disaster restoration industry. From technicians, estimators, project managers, you name it. If you're looking for a position inside of the restoration arena, Wylander has got the connections that you're looking for. All right, listen, maybe you're a veteran and you're just looking to advance your career, looking for additional opportunities. Well, listen, I invite you to reach out to Wylander, have a conversation about your future. I'm sure you're going to be thrilled. All right, so we are back. Anyways, where we had left it off was, what was that driving point, right? What made you, jump ship and say, okay, we need to tackle this problem?
Yeah. Wow. Setting me up here for success. So, again, I don't want to selfishly plug, but it's not for my own intents, 33-mile radius. But the whole premise.
Actually, hold on. I think we do that. Plug who?
Yeah. 33.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There we go. You got to get them to sponsor the show or something.
Yeah,
but anyway, so we had used pretty much all the contenders and all the solutions on the market. And, if I were to categorize solutions into two different buckets, one bucket was mom and pop software companies, right? And even I would consider even Restoration Manager before it got acquired by Veris would have fallen into mom and pop job docs, PSA, so on and so forth. And what I mean by mom and pop software companies is like, they genuinely have like great intent, but they just don't have the funding or ability to build out like a Tesla like product for the industry. Right. And the only people that had that product, right, or had the funding and the ability to do that, they really weren't centered with the restoration contractor, and their motivation wasn't to build the best product for the restoration contractor. Their motives were clearly, for the insurance companies to be able to, make a more frictionless claims process and so on and so forth. Right. And the way you could tell that is, hey, this specific company might have gotten 10, 20, $30 million of funding, but their product looks the same as it did, 7 years ago. So like, I realized like there really wasn't again, I went to Service Titan, for example, and I think like they're a very reputable company. I'm like, hey, sell to me. They're like, no, we don't sell to the industry. But I was looking for like a Service Titan like product, like a Tesla like product, right? Tesla wasn't around at the time, but you get the gist. Yeah. And the big premise and like the big aha moment was, 33-mile radius, all the leads came into 33-mile radius. I'm like, the number one way we get leads as a restoration contractor, right, is through a phone system, right? Because somebody calls for help. And they had a call recording and they had a little notes box, right, where you put in the notes and everything like that, and like dollar amounts and stuff like that. I'm like, what if that could just be the job? Right. Like, why do I have to sit here and like triple enter information? And like, I did some snooping around, like I knew some web development from like website days, and I elemented it, and I saw it was based off of Twilio. Then I looked more into Twilio, and Twilio is like this voice over IP solution that like Ring Central uses, CallRail uses, and stuff like that. It's basically like this coding environment for phones. And I'm like, the big premise was like, eliminate that double entry. Like, there's no reason why we should answer the phone and then, oh shit, I forgot to put the job into the job management system. Let me go in here and build it out and things like those. Like, how do we make things just super simple and like super trackable and have this source of truth? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like the aha moment, compounded to we were using our current job management system, and it didn't do a good job of job costing. And then I saw that QuickBooks, who they integrated with, had this new feature called QuickBooks Projects, and QuickBooks mm-hmm. Projects was like a job costing feature where you can like start assigning things on the accounting. So I'm like, all right, fine. I don't need them to do that. I just need to use the projects feature. I'm like, hey, instead of creating a customer, sub-customer in QuickBooks, sorry if I'm going into the details, create a projects instead. And they sent me a $12,000 estimate to do that. I'm like, bro, I'm telling you how to make your product better because I'm a restorer. Like, at this point, I didn't want to build a software. I'm just like, just do this. Like, it'll make life easier. And then they had the audacity to come back to me and say, hey, $12,000. I'm like, all right, screw that. We're going to go our own way. And like, the first premise was, all right, let's build something for just Rum Xterra. That was like the first thing. And then, talked to a few other people at some conferences, things like those. Everybody was like, oh my God, super cool. And eventually started reading more books on like product and how to build product people like, things like those. And I'm like, whoa, there's no restoration solution that is obsessed over the customer in the job management space. The closest thing I can tell you is like Company Cam or Encircle, but those are just like vertical softwares that solve like a specific problem. But like, think about how Company Cam really solved the problem of taking pictures. Like, their ads are perfect.
No one did it better. And no one did it better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing could be solved by, okay, I don't want to throw a restoration manager under the bus, but the same use case is go to restoration manager, select the upload button, and upload photos from your camera roll, right? Same use case. You're getting photos into the job file, but Company Cam is like that unique experience through which the technician doesn't have to do extra work to get it in there. It's like the same behavior. And then the other one was, oh, you have to go jump through all these hoops. And all these apps, like, they track dates, they track all kinds of stuff. It was great. Like, a lot of people hacked their way, and there's all these consultants that built all these dashboards and things like those, but it just wasn't easy to get the data in. The technician never wanted to do the things. The project manager didn't want to have those 20 extra clicks.
Right.
And I can go on and on with the use cases, like trying to upload an estimate, and then you got to go in and manually update the date estimated, and then you have to move the job into another status, and then you have to go over the financials tab and put in the estimated revenue. That's like 6 different clicks. It's like, it should just be upload your estimate, boom, done. Right.
Right. So now here's the thing, right? So like, again, like, we understand that, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of pain when it comes down to their own workflow based on what is considered the norm within our industry as far as softwares and tools to use. Yep. So I want to get back to the core of the question. What was that? Here you are with a $12,000 invoice, right? It's like, and you're like, it could have very easily have gone the opposite way. You could have been like, I guess all the software in this industry is just dog shit, and just walk away and continue doing what you're doing. But where was it that, at what point exactly was it that you looked at it and were like, okay, we just can't let things hang out like this. It just has to be better. I'm going to be that guy to solve that problem. Was it the $12,000 invoice?
Yeah, it was at the point of getting the $12,000 invoice and seeing just like, it's like, hey, I'm giving you feedback on how to make your product better. And instead of saying, hey, thanks, we'll give you coffee, or not even say, we'll give you coffee. Right. It's like, I'm a restorer. I'm your customer. I'm telling you, hey, I'm trying to job cost. Your job costing's garbage. Do it this way. And it's like, you have the audacity to charge. Like literally that software provider would not have had a competitor as strong as Albi if they would have just like taken that feedback and been like, not even like implemented it, just been like, Alex, you bring up a great point. Like we will strongly consider it. The $12,000 invoice was like, bleep
the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. It's just like, it's like, I called it the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
And then rebellious Alex is like, there's got to be a better way. Like, you know, I was younger at the time too. Like, what do these guys know about restoration software? Blah, 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 blah. And I was just, it was just like at first it was like, I really like, we need this. We can't move forward. We can do it. Right. And like at that time too, I was like, how hard could it be? You're just going to hire a bunch of people over in another country and just like, you know, pay them $5 an hour and they'll whip it up for you.
Right.
Was the
which
theory,
is going to be my next question, right? Like, which was going to be exactly my next question, right? How did that path look, right? Because I'm sure that there was like a ton of obstacles along the way, and you know, maybe there were some nights where you're like, man, I don't know if this is a great idea or not, right? Like, I know that we need the solution, but man, this really sucks putting it together. Like, what was that general experience for you in the early stages?
Yeah, so I knew I don't know how to code, so I knew I needed to get somebody else who knows how to code bought into the thing and on my side, right? So met up with a bunch of restorers that were also wanting to build their software and had the same pains. We were like, hey, we're all going to partner up together. We started interviewing people for tech, and then I went to my buddy from college, and what brought us together was we were both hustlers during college. We didn't have time to party because we were working super hard, and he was in the tech space. He was an engineering manager at a healthcare startup. And then he was on his way to Microsoft. He was going to move to Seattle, was his dream. He'd always tell me about that and stuff like that. And I went to him like, yo, how do I find like a guy that could do this kind of thing? And he's like, well, I can do it, but you're on your way to Microsoft. He's like, well, yeah, but like we could figure something out, nights and weekends or whatever. I'm like, great, let's do it. He's like, I want 30% of the company. Whoa. Like that was like initially a slap in my face. I went from like $12,000 invoice to like 30% of the company. So I didn't initially react. I went back, slept on it, right? And I was like, all right, look, he's the guy. If he's going to be the one that's going to help me build the product, right? Like I have no idea how to code and stuff like that. Look, we'll do it. So I had all the money. I had the idea. I had the know-how. I had the restoration company that was going to be the guinea pig and stuff like that. And he wanted 30% of the company. It was the best fucking decision I've ever made. And in fact, when we needed a little bit more capital, he matched me on how much I put in. And then we became 50-50 partners. And actually, that dichotomy that I said I had with me and my dad, me and Shmuel have the same thing, which I think is like the key to success. And one day I'll probably write a book about it. But yeah, so then we started, and obviously we were limited on funds. We first started outsourcing to 2 different countries, and it was just him and another developer here in the States. Eventually we realized though that outsourcing development doesn't create the product and the experience we want. So we knew we had to bring it back within house. We had already, burnt over like $1.5 million at the time. So we're like, all right, we're going to bring it in house. I started understanding the software business a little bit more. I was like, look, I can't do 2 things and do them well. So I had to have the tough conversation with my father of, hey, instead of me buying you out and you happily ever retiring, we have to do the reverse because I'm going to go build this product. And then I knew we had to go and, raise money because the only way we were going to build the vision of the product and not just have something that's like all the other competitors was to have a full development team that's legit here in the States, all under one roof and get into those products. Like, so that was, again, a little bit of.
How was the dynamic then when you told your father, like, hey man, you know what, like I just can't be at 2 places at once. You guys have already built a fairly successful restoration company. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, it was tough. It really was tough because it was like a curveball. And again, my dad had already hit rock bottom a bunch of times throughout life. and like I was afraid that it was going to be another rock bottom. He never, like, even to this day, like verbally told me like, hey, I hate you for it or whatever. He was very supportive over it. He's like, yeah, absolutely, this is a much bigger idea. Like, the only way to make Rum Xterra bigger would have been to like start franchising or whatever. And like, I was always a big vision kind of guy, and he was super supportive of it. He ended up being one of our early investors and things like those also, for a period of time. But yeah, he was supportive, and that's what I appreciate about him. He's always been supportive, and even if we disagreed or agreed on things, he was very, very supportive. Now,
That's awesome, dude.
I don't know if he, you know, and when he goes to sleep at night, he's like, you know, Alex,
Secretly,
what'd you do to me? But he's in good shape. I mean, the company was running itself, you know, by itself pretty much after I left, and you know, it's still growing and it's still there, and yeah.
I love it. So we had you on the show quite a while ago, which I will link in the video description and in the show notes below, a link to that episode. But what have been some of the changes? One thing that I've noticed you guys have done very well, and I don't know if I'm going to keep this in the episode or not, right? Because this may be too information. Recently, I reached out to you. And I was like, hey, man, I got a spot that's open for sponsorship on the Restoration Domination podcast, which, full disclosure, this particular episode is not a sponsored thing. It's actually something that we just genuinely wanted to do. But here's how the conversation went. Hey, Alex, I got this idea. I got this spot. This is how much it cost. Can I send you a link? I sent them the link. 2 minutes later, I hadn't even put my phone away in my pocket. The payment was made. Now, here's the reason why I mention this, right? Because how you do one thing is how you do a lot of things, right? I speak to so many business owners, so many entrepreneurs, and, you know, there's always money that's involved, right? And the decision-making process, and let me just be fully, I'm talking about some of the consultants in our industry. I'm talking about people that are selling courses in our industry. It's people that are talking about big ticket items all day, every day. And they're like, when you present them with like, hey, this is what it is, this is how much it costs, all of a sudden they begin to buy how they hate other people's to buy their product. It's the wait, let me think about it, the whole thing, right? What does this have to do with this episode? I'll tell you what it has to do with it. I've noticed that anytime in any one of the Facebook groups, anytime at all, that there is a question or about software or any kind of suggestions, I feel like within a couple of seconds to a few minutes at most, someone from Albi is responding, regardless if this is a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, it doesn't matter. Somebody's there responding. And that's how that story ties together, right? Is that speed in which you're tackling an issue and then trying to find a solution for it, right? How different is Albiware today as it was, you know, possibly we had you on the show before, due to those customer responses, people wanting maybe additional bells or whistles or different additional integrations? And how is Albi, how are you tackling that, right? Because I'm sure you're getting a lot of different questions and ideas and suggestions. How do you respond to them so quickly and then siphon through which ones are the ones to implement and which ones not? Because again, kind of going back to your story, you don't want to say no to somebody and create an additional competitor, right? Maybe, possibly. Yeah, exactly. So how do you do that?
Yeah, really, really loaded question. So to kind of unpack, the velocity thing is, and my word of advice to every restorer is be the customer you want to have.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
Because,
and from a sales perspective, I got to say this because we already touched on it. And this is like my little way of venting to everybody out there in the restoration world, because I don't care. Buy how you want other people to buy, plain and simple. And don't get upset when people are selling you the way that you should be selling.
Yep. 100%.
Don't get offended. And like, what does everybody say in the industry? Follow up, follow up, follow up. Mm-hmm. Dude, do you have any idea how many times I've gotten FU emails because I'm on my third email or my third phone call?
That's just plain rude and disrespectful.
They're
and
like, oh my God,
sales gods are going to come and you're going to burn in sales hell. Simple.
It's so comical. It's so comical. And these are some guys, one in particular that I have a story on, which is not within our industry, but he is a consultant in the construction game. And his constant message is, you got to follow up. You got to follow up. You got to be aggressive. You know, get at least 10 points of like that whole shit. Right. Mm-hmm. Dude, third email, this guy was like crumbling. Like, and I was like, wow, it's like, you know, yet you're selling a product, telling people about how to buy. But anyways, so kind of backing off on that.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I think we're all so focused, and obviously we're VC backed. We have revenue goals to hit, right? Like sales is important, right? But like
100%.
I think a lot of people are like they lose focus, right? Like my role in life, and I'm being on this podcast, will we get some business from it? Great. But like it's just shine my light, share my experiences. Somebody else are going to pick them up, and somebody else is going to change their life. Just like I changed my life through 75 Hard and a bunch of other things, you know. That's like the goal. Like just share stuff. Like don't try to share stuff with a gate trap link that's going to convert somebody into whatever, because then you're going to sign a customer right away, and guess what, they're not going to stay on forever, and then they're going to go talk crap about you on Facebook. So that's one. But related to like the dynamic you're seeing within the Facebook groups, I love it, and I actually loved it. There was a pivotal point within the Facebook groups that Albi's image went from, oh my god, this thing's the best thing since sliced bread, to this thing is awesome, it's a game changer, but here are some of the cons. I think somebody asked for like the cons, right? Mm-hmm. I love that. And people are like probably resistant. Oh, I don't want to talk bad because I want to be diplomatic or whatever. But like, it's great because it gives that buyer like, hey, we're really good at these things. And by the way, expect bumpy road here. And it actually helps us sell even more, because like the buyer knows what they're signing up for. They already know that, hey, we sell a bunch of people every single month, and onboarding has been a weakness of ours that we recently fixed, right? They already know that, like, no, don't try to go in with the expectation of replacing Company Cam, because that's not what Albi's meant to do. And you will probably set up yourself for failure if you're going to just throw out Company Cam and use Albi instead, or Encircle or whatever, right? So like, I love that. Like people can just express their opinions, and then we take all of that, and like we're a product-led organization. We are like, the only way Albi is going to grow is not because some insurance carrier is going to mandate our product. It's not because we're going to spin off a product for insurance carriers to like, you know, charge them for the data, right? It's nothing. The only way we're going to grow is by building the best freaking job management system within the space that like everybody wants to use, that everybody will use, that helps them get paid faster and grow and scale their business. And the only way we can do that is by having all these things. Because if you tell me, hey, Alex, you look great, I loved your Rico Garcia podcast, and then you go back and tell your friend, oh, he shouldn't have dropped the F-bomb, right? Like that feedback doesn't come to me. I have no idea how to become better. And like, you're doing me a disservice.
Right.
So now in terms of how we build products, we have a product team, and that consists of a product owner. I kind of attend those meetings too in my CTO, because like we're visionaries up in the clouds, right? And then there's a product designer and then a project manager. So it's like a 5-person team. And what we do is we conduct product interviews, right? Like we interview every quarter about 60 to 70 restoration contractors. And when we do the interview process, we don't focus on just the app. We try to look at the behaviors of the different people. So like, well, how do technicians go about their day? How do project managers go about their day? How do general managers go about their day? What are some of their struggles? What are some of their pains, right? And then we eventually narrow down straight into the product. And then we create these things called personas on every one of those. So we'll say, hey, general managers of a restoration industry, and we'll create a fake character, Bob. Bob cares about metrics, cost of goods sold, visibility, so on and so forth. Our BI tool needs work in these 3 components. Okay, let's build this BI tool to help Bob, which represents the general population of general managers. So like when we build things, we can't build them one-on-one just because, you know, Joe from Ercolano, I mean, we have 3,000 or 4,000 people on the platform. Like we can't like build for like one, but we can cluster them together into these personas and then get to their pains. And everything we build, every story within our project management system has a pain and has a way the user is going to have a pain. So we don't just build a pretty Kanban dashboard or a reporting dashboard. We build the user is able to see what their turn on receivables is and be able to correct it and therefore get paid faster. Like those are the stories that one feature goes about. Versus other people seem to go into like, oh my God, we just got to get features, right? Bells and whistles, bells and whistles, bells and whistles. It's like that bell and whistle isn't going to do anything if it doesn't solve an actual pain. And then when we sell, like all the way to the marketing messaging and to the sales as part of our organization and success, like when a salesperson comes in, it's like, hey, what are your pains, Rico? Oh, this, and this. Oh, we can't help you. Sorry. Like we'll literally walk people out the door. Or what's your pain? Oh, I don't have any problems. I just want to see your software. Well, why are you here? Go do other things. Like, we want to find people that have actual problems that our software can actually help, right? Because we want customers for life. It takes us 12 months to pay back the investment that we made on acquiring that customer. So if we have a customer that stays with us for 6 months, we made a mistake.
Right.
We spent the money to the wrong customer, right?
Right.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. So here's a tricky question to answer, and you may not necessarily be the best person to ask this too, right? Just because you're so close to it. Where do you feel that Albiware is head and shoulders above all software that's out there within our industry? And do you feel that there's any one segment or bell and whistle, as you would say, that maybe a competitor does have that's kind of got a one up on Albi, but you're at their heels?
100%. I'll start with the latter first, because I understand the market. So like, I'll be honest with you. One of the areas we're looking to get into more is the banner groups, right? The franchise groups. So, and as we know, Next Gear Solutions, I'll talk about it openly, has like the banner groups on lockdown, right? If you're a franchisee, whether you like Mika or not, or whether you like Dash or not, you're probably getting it shoved down your throat because they do such a great job, serving the franchisor, right? And we were just blind to that. We don't know what the problems are. We're finally working with franchisors, and we've landed a couple contracts to where that will be fixed eventually. But like right now, like, there are certain royalty and reporting and assignment things that like those banner groups need that like we fall short on. So that's one. Two, embedded within the insurance ecosystem, right? Like we have Exact Analysis and Xactimate, right? Hopefully we'll work on CoreLogic. I mean, they're a competitor, but they've expressed interest in talking with us. But like, we don't have insurance friendly or insurance serving products, right? So those really heavy TPAs that really care about like, swaying their carriers and having that, are probably not like the absolute best fit for us because, that's an area, right? But other than that, like where we shine is for the end user, right? Whether it's the technician, project manager, general manager, owner, right?
And actually, let me pause you right here for a second because I don't want the thought to kind of get away from you. Do you think that part of that thinking is just because really when you built your restoration company, same way that I built my restoration company, it was a cash business. Like you went out to close cash deals, which, cash deals or, you weren't really on the TPA side of things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like a rebel at heart. When I got into the industry, I saw that like part of the industry wants to play the TPA game. And I actually got convinced in like certain business models, the TPA game makes sense. Right. But yeah, Albi is mostly like we provide the tools to document and so on and so forth. We just don't like collude with the insurance companies to be like, hey, I got all this data that can like help you underwrite these specific things, right? Like that's not our like value prop, which again, Garrett Gray and Next Year Solutions, like freaking genius, right? And they had a large exit because of it. And like they changed a lot of people's lives because of it. It's just not my cup of tea. So in essence, what we're trying to do is build the best product for the actual restoration contractor from a product-led growth focus. So again, if you look at, how Tesla got big, how Facebook got big, and so on and so forth, they were very focused on the user behavior and built the products that people liked versus, certain insurance companies that are mandated by or think of like hospitals, right? Like you have to go to this hospital because it's in your area. They don't really have to build a product, right? You're going to go there anyway, kind of thing.
Right.
So that's our focus. And I'm very proud of what we've built. And I think we've built an incredible team. And, I'm sitting here taking some credit for this, but if it wasn't for the team, like we wouldn't be where we are. So yeah, it takes a lot of ingredients, including capital, amazing people bought into the vision and a mission to make things happen. And we did a great job kind of bringing all those together.
Yeah. And you were also talking about like how your marketing per se, right? Like how you're bringing people into your ecosystem, which by the way, I think is amazing. You do a lot of content style marketing, things that are actually going to be useful, whether it's an Albiware user or not. It doesn't really matter, right? But you're kind of putting all these great lines in the water. And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. I want to talk and just kind of like start wrapping things up. I know that you recently father, so I definitely want to touch on that. And then also I believe that you have a book that we can expect possibly by the end of the year. But I want to go ahead and before we tackle those two last subjects, if you will, I'd like to kind of get an idea on what you see, because you talk a lot about marketing and how to position yourself as a restoration company, right? How much of those same tactics are highly effective now that you're not really doing the restoration side of things, but now it's software and your audience has changed a little bit. How are you tackling that?
Yeah. So I made a vow to myself that I wouldn't selfishly try to achieve something from a marketing perspective, and that I would merely shine my light, and the people that like me for who I am, not for who I'm trying to be, will come flock with me, whether they're employees, prospects, customers, so on and so forth. And the people who won't, they'll just kind of go away. And I learned the concept of shining your light a while back, but like for those of you who have done 75 hard, I was an example. 75 hard changed my life. I was 240 pounds, went down to 200 pounds, like completely spun me around. There's actually a YouTube video, which I'll give you the link, Rico, for people to watch about my journey, right? That was a byproduct. And I know Andy Frisella also makes money off of self-help stuff or whatever. Didn't have to buy anything from Andy Frisella or from the people that shared their journey, but it actually changed my life. So like my principle in life now, and that's why I'm writing the book and so on and so forth, is I'm just going to be me. And I'm going to, document and share as much of me as possible. I know there's confidential information. Why would you share that marketing tactic? Romex Stera's competitor is going to take that marketing tactic that you wrote a playbook about and go take Romex Stera down and things like those. I know there's all kinds of naysayers, but I'm just going to be me, share all my experiences, shine my light back into the world so freaking hard, and just try to impact as many lives as I can. And hey, if we make a big buck out of it, great. If not, I'm financially set as is. Like, I don't need to go and try to chase people. So that's kind of like my approach and kind of how it's changed. And I think, it took some life-changing events for me to kind of formulate that, and amazing mentors that I have in my corner to do that. The reality is
checked out during COVID.
Oh yeah. I was in the hospital.
We may not have been having this conversation.
Oh yeah.
If things would have gone slightly differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And that opened up my eyes, and we see this world in a linear way, go to Rico and say hi to him only when you want Rico to give you money, or, sit and stall over these decisions because they're big decisions to make and all of that. And then when you zoom out and it's dude, you can die tomorrow.
Right.
It's no, all right, here, Rico, here's the money for the sponsorship, or, hey, firefighter, here's this thing, let's do it. You don't have time to stall. And a lot of times, cause I do some coaching on the side, just cause I love doing it. And a lot of times, the people I coach, they're so hung up, oh, I had to dip into my personal savings for $8,000 and stuff like that. And they're we're building legacy here. I'm dude, when you sell your restoration company for $5 million at the end of the day, is that $8,000 that you kind of had to dip into really matter? Is that really what we have to worry about? Right. And then the same thing with employees. It's cheap employees cost more than good employees. Right. So yeah, I think life's short, and I think you move quick on things, and if you fail, you learn from your failures and you rise up again. And if you win, great. And I feel this industry, biggest bottleneck to every single restoration founder listening right now to this podcast is them. I'm the biggest bottleneck to Albi. If I can't grow into our goal is to go IPO, if I can't become the CEO of an IPO company, Albi's not going IPO with me. They might fire me and then go IPO otherwise, but it's just not happening. So Rico, if you want to grow a $20 million a year restoration company and you're not the CEO of a $20 million restoration company material right now, you got to, work on yourself.
100%.
Simple.
100%. So fatherhood, how has that changed? What's that experience been like for you? How has it changed? Has it changed how you are doing business, the hours in which you're dedicating to business? Let's talk about that dynamic for a little bit.
Yeah. So I have a quote that's in my book, Hustlers Fail at Scale. And let that sink in a little bit. We all think that success is getting shit done, right? It's get shit done mentality, boom, 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 boom. And I'm still high on it. I love when I'm back-to-back meetings, I'm doing this podcast, I'm going out to lunch or whatever. But my daughter coming into the world was more okay, now it's about legacy, right? Now it's how do I build value for her world and things like those. And the time with the family, especially because I almost died from COVID right while my wife was pregnant with my daughter, 6-7 months. Right. And so it was a really big eye opener. It's all right, what's the point of making a ton of money, having the blue chip on my shoulder because I'm a venture-backed startup founder and I previously grew this great restoration company and things like those, if I don't get time with my daughter? right? Or I don't get time with my wife and things like those. What's the point of like, you know, not being healthy, like being all successful, having all this money, but being, you know, overweight, super unhealthy if you can't like hold your daughter when she takes her first steps? So like that was like the catalyst for me to realize I had no choice. It's like, all right, I got to show up as a father. Really wanted it. And like it changed my life around. I look at everything from legacy right now. And I wish I would have done that 10 years later, because a lot of the small decisions in life don't matter when you look at them through the lens of legacy, right? It just doesn't matter. Investing in yourself is like one of the most important things. So, but I love it. She comes with me. She's been to 10 countries already because I have to travel for work. That's fine. There's no excuses. It's like, hey, you're my backpack. So she comes with
quite
me.
literally.
Exactly. Right? Literally my backpack. Literally, she's my carry-on. I don't have to pay for her to get a seat right on the plane.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, it's been awesome, man. She just started walking. She actually
when she's 25.
Go ahead.
When she's 25.
Yeah.
What do you want her to say about you?
Huh.
How's that for a podcasting question?
Yeah. I want her to say that you believed in me, because I think that's very important. And
that's awesome.
I want her to create the best fucking version of herself and like just pour that back into the world. No bumpers. Like I had bumpers. You have to go to college. You have to be a doctor. You have to be a lawyer, whatever. Like, no, I want you to be the best person you can. Find that passion, find that calling, be the absolute best person that you can. And then just go touch as many people in life as possible, right? With that best version, whether that's because you're an awesome ballet dancer, or whether you're the best chef in the world, or maybe, you know, maybe it's like, hey, you're destined to be a stay-at-home mom and be the best mother to your kids, whatever it might be. That's what I want.
That's awesome. Right? That's awesome. You should take this clip and like, do you got an email for her yet?
No, I don't. I should create an email for her.
So like, my wife and I have an email for both of our boys.
Okay.
And, you know, it's something that we plan on gifting them or letting them have access to once they get substantially older. And we try to once a week or whenever, you know, ideally it would be once a week, but honestly, we don't get to it once a week. But if there's like a special moment or a special message, or you see them do something, so we just kind of like capture that moment and then send it off via email for them to look at, because, you know, again, in the digital world, right? You don't really know what your father thought when you were like 2. Imagine if you had like this email that you could go back to and be like, I wonder what he was going through as a man, as a father, right? In that moment, you know, did he stay up at night? Like, you know, what were his late night thoughts when, you know, he was coming home from, you know, tired from work? And, you know, it's kind of deep, right? So we kind of have done that as a little practice that, I always like sharing with people. Let's talk about the book that is going to be coming out. What is this book about, and how is it going to help?
Yeah. So again, under the premise of shining your light, I thought books were the coolest thing in the world, right? Because you have somebody who struggles with something for decades, years, a lifetime maybe, and then they boil it down into this thing that you can consume on like a flight from New York to LA kind of thing, right? And I think it's the coolest thing because like big books, like, you know, even Atomic Habits is more recent, but like think of like Dale Carnegie, for example. Like his message still lives with us for years and years. I mean, if you want to get really like historic, like the Bible is still around, and the stories of the original people, like it's impact humanity, right? So I'm like, all right, under the premise of legacy, shine your light, things like those, I was like, all right, I want to write a book. And, you know, I also saw that there weren't many business self-help books for the restoration industry, So I was like, all right, this is the area of the world, the 100,000 people sector of this billion-person world where I can shine my light and make a lot of impact. So I started writing it, and then I hired a whole book team that I'm working with too, an editor, a copywriter, a person to inset it and things like those. And it's supposed to be the all-in-one book from a business perspective for restoration companies. So it takes you from, you know, what I would call laying the foundation, which is like 0 to 3 million, to proving the model, which is 3 to 6 million, and then to scaling, which is 6 million and up. And then it talks about the 4 different levers that you have that you could push within your business, which are the 4 Ps. They're people, property, process, and then product. I've just made them all P's, so they're alliterations. And then there's a bunch of stories that different things that I was able to change within my business and different mindset shifts that I needed on my journey. And I hope that I could take that book and people would read it and they would be able to get the boost that they need to be able to turn their business around and really build a legacy out of restoration. Because I think it's a very underlooked, unsexy industry that, like, I think especially now, you can build a very powerful legacy. You can change people's lives. And we think it's just, oh, small. It's not like plumbing or electrical or things like those, but it's actually ginormous, and we have huge competitive.
What do you think about the competitive advantage for the smaller restoration contractor? Not to sway your answer one way or another, but my personal belief is I think that more opportunity is being presented to the smaller restoration contractor today than ever before, because you do have a lot of big companies that are gobbling up other small companies. And here's a word to restoration dominators out there, from coast to coast. A word of encouragement. And it's true. They don't know what they're doing. They're huge. Yeah. They're big. They've got the trucks. They've got what apparently is a lot of money. Trust me, majority of them have no clue what to do. And any small decision takes them months for them to actually get around and so there's a lot of potential, right? There's a lot of wiggle room there, a lot of pivoting room there that I think that for the smaller restoration contractors, actually an advantage. What do you see that playing out long term?
Yeah, I think when you're small, what you have to do first, and you have the opportunity to do, is to establish your differentiator, which if you look at all the big guys, they all have like the same spiel. It's almost like to the T, percentage of revenue from TPAs, percentage of revenue from commercial and things like those, to the T, the type of equipment they use and what they name their people, and, all the hiring benefits and things like those. But like when you're small, you can start like establishing a differentiator that you're going to scale on. Right. And that differentiator is going to be, how are you different to your customer? How are you also different to your employees? Right. And there's all kinds of different spin-offs that you can do. And I would not be intimidated by these big guys. Like, it's such a fragmented industry. To put it in perspective, I had a $100+ million a year restoration company in the Chicagoland market. Right. And it's not who you guys all think it is. It's actually a like fly under the radar kind of restoration company here in the Chicagoland market. And I would like barely even run into them. Like, right. There wasn't one contender. And like even the Serv Pros and Service Masters and Puro Cleans, like I would never run into them. It's like, and like I grew a significant company. And like, if you were to ask my competitor, hey, how significant is Rome Xterra? They'd be like, I don't know.
I don't even know who they are.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's like the industry's huge. You establish a differentiator, you treat people differently. And instead of us like trying to copy like word for word, 24/7 emergency response, emergency services, water mitigation technician, all these things, like try to be different. Try to have like a different value prop. Like go to agents and don't go with donuts and saying, oh yeah, 24/7 emergency response, BBBA plus rated. Like, tell them, hey, I know you hate claims. We help you with claims. Claims are the number one reason why you lose, potential customers, right? Don't go to employees and be like, well, it's $12 an hour and blah, 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 blah. Be like, oh yeah, you can earn up to $150,000 a year. Here's the percentage model. Here's the revenue per truck and stuff like that, right? Here's unlimited paid time off. Here's all these other like crazy things that don't exist in the industry, and be the first one to implement them. And because this industry is so archaic, all you have to do is look outside to other industries. Like it's that easy. Like look at how software companies sell to their people, and then just like copy that and sell to agents with that. And then your mind will literally be blown, because it doesn't exist. We're still like probably running newspaper kind of ads in the restoration industry here.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, some of the individuals that I have conversations with that, need some help in their marketing or positioning or whatever the case may be, we have these conversations and I'm like, I present an idea and they're like, whoa, what is this? And I'm like, no, dude, that's like from this industry and it works like a charm. All you got to do, and it's there and it's readily available. You actually are a customer of this type of sales process and you're not implementing that in your business. And, it's just interesting to see the restoration industry always felt like it's just a little bit behind, right? Yeah. Maybe because, people are spending too much time in the truck and not enough time really thinking about the legacy of what, who they are as an individual, meaning investing in yourself and your knowledge. Even if it's not the perfect time for you to execute, at least taking the opportunity to get familiar with whatever the subject matter is, and then wait for the right opportunity to strike to where now you can deploy this new information, right? Which is usually a pretty damn good strategy. You don't want to be needing the information and then not have it, and it's much better to do it that way. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity now for the industry. The book that you're writing, do we have a timeline on it? Do we have any links on it yet? When is the announcement going to be made? Do we have any of this information?
Yeah, January or February of 2024 will be when it gets launched. So this is actually the first time I'm publicly talking about it. But in the meantime, I'll send you my link to my Facebook, and people can follow me there. And I'll definitely come back on the show and talk all about the book when it's launching.
Well, you
And
said, can we publicly admit, publicly make the commitment that I write the foreword for the book?
Oh, I do want you to read it. And I do want you to write about it, but I do have a couple other people that I would love to kind of compete for the forward. But
man,
yeah, I won't commit. Yeah, I won't commit to that 100%.
Damn. See,
but, you are invited to the book launch party officially.
That's awesome.
So we are going to do a book launch party, and I actually want you, if actually we can publicly commit here, if we're talking about that.
Oh, here we go.
If you can publicly commit to MC the book launch party
all day,
I think you would be a great MC, and I'm gonna get a DJ out there behind the decks, and you're gonna be there pumping people up.
Let's do it.
I'd love to. So that I will publicly commit.
All right, awesome, man. Cool. Parting thoughts right now, if you had to recommend a couple of books for people to read, considering that yours isn't out yet, what would be your top 2 or 3 books that you would say right now, read these books? I believe that in today's landscape, if you gain this knowledge, it could put you in a better position. What would those be?
That's tough. I think I've read over 1,200 self-help and business books. I read a ton. So like more recent, Never Eat Alone is a great book. It talks about relationships in general, and like how to basically spur the economy of relationships around you, and how to the law of reciprocity, and like how you should keep giving and not expecting back. Like that's a really good book. Atomic Habits,
great book,
awesome book. It basically teaches you how to build habits and the science behind habits. And then number 3 I'd recommend Limitless. Limitless dives into like how your brain actually works.
Is that Jim Quick?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, a really good book on like how your brain works. He had both Atomic Habits and Limitless have a same story of the author going through a very traumatic brain experience where like there was heavy blunt force trauma to the brain, and then they had to relearn how to build stuff. And then in that, they basically discovered the power that it has. But I think like habits, consistency, and the right strategy are kind of like the keys to success, right? So yeah, those would be the books that I would recommend. And just building the habit of reading books,
period.
Like the 10 pages a day of 75 Hard, if you just apply that in life, it's great. Because again, somebody struggled with something, right? Like Atomic Habits, somebody struggled with habit building. They lived through it, and then they went and wrote a 150, 200 page book that you can read on a flight, again, on your next flight to the trade show. Instead of sleeping, you read. And now you have that knowledge. And then again, apply it. Because like consistency isn't the only thing that makes us successful. If you look outside, there's so much consistency.
Right.
So many people driving the same way to work, drinking the same cup of coffee, doing the same exact things. They're not necessarily consistent. They're not necessarily successful because they haven't applied them. So you also need to make sure you apply them.
I love it. If someone wanted to go ahead and reach out to you, they wanted to learn more about Albiware, they want to follow you, where should they go ahead and do so?
Yeah. So if you want to find out more about Albiware, albiware.com. I'll give you the link too. You could put it in the chat, and our team will take care of you. And there's a ton of content out there where you can like learn all about the software without talking with anybody. No strings attached. If you're interested in talking with me more, whether it be coaching, I'm going to have some events, speaking, things like those. You can just find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. Just look up Alex Duta. I'll probably be the first option there.
Awesome, Alex, man. Thank you so much, brother, for taking the time out of your day and hanging out with us. Good little background. I think this is going to be like a perfect episode for the Father's Day weekend because a lot of great stories there. Love what you're doing with the organization. Love the energy that you're bringing, the new style of energy that you're doing with your content. I think that you're definitely going to appeal to a lot more of the fresher blood that's coming into the industry. I think that we definitely needed it because there's a lot of not that there's anything wrong with old school way of thinking or old school ways of getting your message out there, but the way that you're kind of packaging it and putting it together, like you really, really get it. And the responsiveness, speed to market, and all of these things are really top qualities that I think that anybody in business, forget about the restoration arena, that anybody in business would definitely want to be associated with. And of course, Dominators links are going to be in the video description as well as in the show notes as always. And don't forget, hustle, hack, dominate. I'll see you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.